Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar on AI and cheating in tech hiring. We will be getting started in just a few moments. We're just giving people a few seconds to sign in. And while you're waiting, do feel free to scan the code here on the screen to follow us on LinkedIn. And that way you can stay up to date with our latest webinars like this one, blog articles, product updates, and more. Gonna give it another 5 seconds. Please don't hesitate to say hello in the chat. Say hi, say where you're joining us from. It's also very reassuring to know that people are here and they can hear us. Hello. Hello. Oh, Montreal, New York,
Montreal.
Colombia. I love to see it.
I'm in
Paris.
Paris.
Hi, everybody. Okay, well, let's get started. So hello, Francois and Guillaume, and hello to everyone in the audience. I am your host today. My name is Natalie, and I'm part of the marketing team here at Coderpad. Thank you again for taking the time to join us as we talk about technical recruitment, AI, and cheating. Before we dive in, I wanted to quickly share some practical information. So I wanted to introduce my colleague, Alice, or Coderpad, as you see her here. She will be working behind the scenes today. Hi, Alice. Making sure that everything is running smoothly. And if you do need help with anything at all, you can reach out to her in the chat. Secondly, I'd like to remind you that this webinar is being recorded, and we will send you the recording in the next few days. Finally, there will be time for a live Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. So if you have any questions for our panelists, please submit them in the Q&A tab. Remember that you can do so at any time throughout the webinar, and we will do our best to get to them all. So after this quick introduction, we will meet our experts. We'll then get stuck into a roundtable style discussion before moving on to a live Q&A session. That's more than enough from me. Without further ado, let me introduce you to our pros. I am joined today by François Gauthier and Guillaume Vigneron. Panelists,
Hi.
do you think you could let us know a little bit about yourselves? Maybe let's start with François and then Guillaume.
Sure. Thank you very much, Natalie. And hello, everyone. Hello, Guillaume. Hello, Alice. I'm very delighted to be with you today. My name is François Gauthier. As you can hear from my French accent, I'm located in Paris, in France. I'm currently working at Ubisoft. It's a gaming company, and I'm the director for talent acquisition, internal mobility, and campus. I'm currently leading a team of 12 people, and we are hiring around 400 people a year. I've been in tech recruitment for the past few years, hiring mainly developers, infrastructure profiles, data profiles, cybersecurity profiles, product, project, design, quality, you name it. So I've been in tech for the past few years, and I've been in love with tech hiring those past few years. And I'm very happy to be sitting at the crossroads of entertainment, art, and technology. Here it is for me. So maybe I give the mic to Guillaume.
Thank you.
Thank you, François. Impressive resume. Thank you, Natalie, for the invitation. My name is Guillaume Vigneron, also very French name and a very tough French accent. Sorry for that. So I'm the CEO of a company called La Super Agence. It's an agency based in Paris that I founded 10 years ago. And we provide B2B services for employer branding and talent acquisition through a methodology called inbound recruiting. So it's roughly candidate attraction, through high quality content. So because of that, we naturally came to AI because of the question of content production, even if we basically produce text contents, but coding is kind of writing, or writing is a kind of code, I don't know. And we also have a large panel of services regarding AI. This is the reason why I'm here, I guess. And so such as training sessions and consulting for companies, mostly in banks and insurance. And companies want to hire with the help of AI. And also, we're developing a platform of services for talent attraction. So we are definitely coding with AI, with the help of AI, and that's it. And
Thank you.
I'm definitely also an AI addict that I'm spending like probably 3 or 4 hours a day during my free time uh, looking at what has been launched by OpenAI, Anthropic, and all this stuff. So I'm really happy to discuss these topics today.
Thank you. Thank you so much to both of you for joining us today. And we are very happy to have you. Now, before we kick off this discussion, I feel like we need to ask sort of a simple but pretty foundational question. What is cheating and how do we actually define cheating? I think that everybody here, whether it's our panel today or those in the audience, I think everybody has their own definition of what is or isn't cheating as part of the hiring process. So let's address that. Francois and Guillaume, do you think you could tell us what you consider cheating within the hiring process, and in particular in regards to the use of AI? Maybe Francois, you could go first.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for the question. Let's clarify what we mean by cheating. I think the answer will differ from one company to another and from one culture to another too. In my opinion, cheating starts when trust is broken,
Hmm.
meaning you have a clear set of rules, let's say for an assessment, for example, and the person disrespects the rules that are commonly agreed. I think that's cheating. But in some cultures or in some countries or some regions, I guess, yeah, you also, oh, sorry,
What's
light
happening?
thing.
Somebody turned off.
All right, nighttime. All right, daytime now. So in some cultures, I guess some rules are unspoken, and let's say some candidates might want to explore the gray area. So
Mm,
you send a multiple choice question to a developer to assess their skills, and you don't say that they shouldn't use Gen AI. If they use Gen AI, are they cheaters or are they just uh, trying to explore that gray area? And I
mm.
guess it's a very cultural answer, but from one region to the other, the answer might be very different.
Mm. I think it was interesting something that you said in the discussions leading up to today, was something about, because we were talking about, and we'll get into that a little bit later on, we were talking about how recruiters use, how talent acquisition uses AI. And you were saying, well, we don't tell candidates how or where we've used AI. Should they have to tell us? Like,
Yeah,
can we expect that they tell us if we don't actually tell them?
yeah,
So I think, and I think it's interesting what you say about sort of guidelines as well. I think if you do have very clear, very strict guidelines, then possibly you can say you didn't follow those guidelines, you're cheating.
Mm,
If there aren't any guidelines, or if like those guidelines aren't clear, then it's more difficult to say you did something that you weren't allowed to if they didn't know that they were not allowed to do that.
yeah, is
Um,
it cheating or is it a smart move? Sometimes it's
right.
blurry, right?
Is it using resources?
Yeah.
Guillaume, what do you
yeah.
think?
Yeah, I fully agree with Francois on this thing that you have rules, explicit rules, explicitly explained and written and approved rules. I think
Hmm.
when in the context of hiring developers, especially, I think you need to people have to commit, to
Hmm.
follow the rules. But there is a thing with developers and with the coding world is that the definition of cheating is very specific, is very particular because cheating is a kind of mark of honor in some cultures, as Francois underlined, and the frontier between cheating and hacking is not sometimes very easy to prove,
Mm,
So of course, when it's a hiring process, we can say that, and if the rules are very clear, as you said, then okay, you don't use AI, or you use AI in a specific context. But generally speaking, the developers, I think it's one of the few jobs where when you have cheated during your time, you have hacked, a forbidden database, you have hacked a system. Well, you can be hired after that by a company because say, oh my God, you find a way to you find a leak in a code, so we hire you. How many jobs can be like this? So it's very hard to. That's the reason why we have 1 hour to discuss this topic. But hacking and cheating, difficult question, really.
And I think one thing I'd add is that you may have very clear guidelines that, for example, you may say we don't want you to use any external resources. And obviously, a candidate that uses external resources, you could say, okay, I consider that's cheating. But were your guidelines reasonable to begin with? Is it reasonable to ask a developer to not use any external resources during an interview or during an online coding test? Is that realistic? Does that mirror their on-the-job experience? I would say no. So you might have your definition of cheating, but is it too far, too distanced from the reality of the job and the skills that you're trying to assess? I think that's something we'll get into during this discussion as well. And maybe just to add sort of my take on like some very concrete examples, because I always feel like it's good to give sort of real life examples. I'd say that like, for instance, paying someone else to attend an interview in your place, I would consider that cheating. However, I wouldn't consider using ChatGPT during an interview, even if you don't disclose that, even if it's secretly. I wouldn't consider that cheating because it's something that developers would do on the job. And I think it's a skill that you may well be looking for. And I do consider, so Guillaume, you were talking about hacking. I would actually consider that so again, this is like how definitions vary, but I would consider like hacking a system to reduce the timer on an online test, for example, to make it look like you did it in like half the time. I would consider that cheating. But I wouldn't consider that it's cheating to look up an answer pretty much anywhere on the internet and copy and paste that answer. I wouldn't consider that cheating because I think that's something you'd do on the job.
Yeah.
And then the question is, do you understand what you're copying and pasting? But yeah, if anybody in the chat wants to chime in with examples of what they think is or isn't cheating, I think that would be really cool. Sorry, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just pointing out what François said about the gray zone. It's not, you're cheating or you're not cheating. Because, for example, if you use Google because you forgot a little aspect of the way you code, you say, oh, because nobody has the great knowledge of Google about things or GitHub or Stack Overflow, what you want. So if you go on Google and check just a minor part of the code to be sure not to break the entire code, is that cheating? And if you use, for instance, an AI which is creating the whole code, the backend, the front end, and everything, is it cheating? Yes, probably, but it's not one or zero, as we say in the binary code. It's something in between, and it's of the sort of this job.
Absolutely. And I guess the follow-up question would be, what do you consider fair use of Gen AI during an interview or a technical assessment? So Guillaume, you mentioned like looking up something that you've forgotten, a definition, a library, whatever that is. What other examples could you give of what you consider is fair use of Gen AI or AI in general? François, maybe?
Yeah. And I will give the mic to Guillaume after, but for the whole recruitment process, I think generating CVs with AI or generating cover letter with AI today, I think is a common practice. So I wouldn't consider that as cheating. At some point, when you generate things with Gen AI, you have to input knowledge so that Gen AI can process that knowledge and then deliver something that you will change and adapt, etc. So I guess you must have knowledge in the beginning, at least to prompt, and then Gen AI will help from that. But I don't think that you can create a cover letter from scratch that is not generic that is super specific.
Mm.
If you don't input the knowledge first, then the document or the anything that is produced by Gen AI that is generated will be super generic. And I think as recruiters we can feel it. Like when I read a CV and it has that very specific ChatGPT tone, or when I
Mm.
read a cover letter and it's a bit too generic, a bit too long,
Mm.
a bit too, yeah, a bit too
To perfect.
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT. Yeah, I think I can sense it.
Mm.
And when the grammar is perfect in the cover letter, and then I have a phone call with the candidate and the grammar is not perfect because we switched from French to English or anything, then I know that it was generated. Is it an issue? I don't think so. Was it already taking place before Gen
Mm.
AI? I think yes, you can always have a friend or a
Yeah, I was
relative.
gonna say you used to ask your
Yeah,
parents to
yeah,
write it
you ask
for
your
you.
parents to write your CV for you, and you ask your friend who is a native English speaker to write
Mm.
your cover letter in English, and yeah, so it has always been something that was around, and even for technical assessment, if you're doing it online, you can ask a friend to do it for you, and
Mm.
there's no real way to make sure that the person is doing it if you're not sitting next to the person. So I don't think using Gen AI today would be considered as cheating in most of the stages of the recruitment process. I would even go further. I would say that us, recruiters, started messing around with AI 10 years ago when we decided that maybe asynchronous video interviews would be great
Mm.
and having AI-powered features that would somehow analyze and assess the verbal and non-verbal elements shared by and then maybe rejecting candidates on the basis of, oh, their non-verbal expressions were not that great according to my online AI-powered platform. And
Mm.
so I think candidates are just giving us the taste of our own medicine, and we don't really like it as recruiters. But if you take a step back and you look at what has been happening on the recruitment market for the past 10 to 15 years, I think we recruiters were the one starting messing around with AI, and now how does the medicine taste like? Well, I think we are having a conversation about it right now. So, so yeah,
Fair enough.
I think it's fair. I think it's fair for candidates, especially the ones that felt that like robots are rejecting their applications or
Mm.
applicant tracking system are auto-rejecting their applications. We know as recruiters it's not true, but the way we decided to automate our recruitment processes those past few years has been interpreted by candidates as something that is, being built at the detriment of the candidates. It's
Mm.
not. It has been like show, showcased as something that might be unfair to them.
Mm.
And now they are using Gen AI and they are not telling the recruiters. Well, I think it's fair. It's fair.
Mm. I think that's something that Guillaume, it's something that you mentioned as well, this idea of fairness
Yeah.
in discussions coming up to today is sort of if is it cheat is there more cheating or is there less fairness? And if a hiring process isn't fair, is it fair to cheat or to use AI? It's a really interesting topic. Guillaume, was there anything
Yeah,
you wanted to add on sort of what is fair use of
fair
Gen
use.
AI?
Also, yeah, and well, to underline what François said about you, for instance, using ChatGPT to pimp your resume or pimp
Mm,
your cover letter. I don't think it's a problem at all because we all do that for sure. And also because coding, because it's really about this skill of coding. It's a hard skill, and it's pretty hard to lie on such a skill. Because if I
mm,
pretend that I know React or Next.js, it will take to Francois maybe 10 seconds to to know that I'm lying, because
mm,
with a few questions we will see that I don't know what I'm talking about. So
mm,
think is more, but if it's about pimping your resume, I think it's a fair use of AI. Also, but I think the fairness also should be about the rules and the fact that will we recognize the fact that having AI skills must be taken into account in the recruiting process. For instance, if I have developed AI skills for 2 years, so now I can have access to better code and better resources and better APIs, for instance. So it's a skill that I have, and I want to be assessed as a developer on the fact that I have the command of AI. And so it would not be fair that there is no AI to prove that a better developer, that maybe this developer on my right is better, without AI, but I'm better than him with AI. So is it fair to me that I don't have AI to express what I'm truly capable of? And that's another way of seeing the question of fairness. I need someone to know that I'm globally better with AI than anyone else. So
And it comes back to fairly assessing your skills and skills-based hiring. It's if you're going to recruit based on a resume and maybe that resume was created by AI, maybe it was pimped, maybe they outright lied on it and said that they spent 10 years working at Google and you don't have a way to verify that. I mean, maybe you do, but anyway, if you're going to hire somebody based solely on that resume and not based on how you can assess their skills, is that a fair hiring process? And is it then sort of, like you say, a taste of your own medicine that then you would be caught out by that? Guillaume, sorry, did I interrupt? Was there something else you wanted to add?
No, I think it's the main issue about fairness and the question of cheating is: are we considering the things right now, or how they should be in the near future? I believe that the future is already here regarding the use of AI for coding production. But when will we be able to assess the ability for a developer to co-work with an AI? Because I don't think that AI will replace any developers. They will just allow him to be more creative, more efficient, more to spend less time on debugging, code and this type of thing. So maybe at a point we should consider what's going to be the next generation of assessment for the skills. That's the core. I think that one of the main issue regarding what we do right now and what company will have to hire in the next months. Sure.
I want to
And
jump on that topic because I think it's super important for the next few years. And Guillaume is opening the door to a whole new conversation. It's how do we assess the AI proficiency of our candidates? Are our candidates using Gen AI to generate answers to test because they know the answer and they want to be sure, or because they don't know the answer and they want to trick us into thinking that they know it? And I think that's a major topic that you just highlighted, Guillaume, right now. I think is the way we test and we assess candidates today is to know what they know. All right. But the way we test today doesn't allow us to know what they do not know. You understand? So are they using Gen AI because they want confirmation of their knowledge, or maybe a best a better formulation of their knowledge, and they want to rephrase it, reshape it, or anything? Or do they want to trick us into thinking that they know? Today, I don't have, the trick to answer this question, but I think it's a major topic for the next few years.
I think I mean, I
Well said.
wouldn't, want to venture a solution, suggest a solution. I think with tools, so like CoderPad, with assessment tools that you have, for example, in the interview setting, where you have like integrated ChatGPT features where you can use AI, so in this case, ChatGPT, you can use it collaboratively with your candidate. So you see what they're looking up, you see how they're using ChatGPT, you can ask them questions, you can sort of discuss it. And at that point, you'll be able to see sort of how they're using AI to support their work. And you'll be able to sort of talk through that and understand their thought process and see also like what prompts they're using, what they're taking and leaving from what ChatGPT suggests. So I feel like that could be a solution on how to, on the one hand, you're sort of showing developers that you understand that AI is part of their job now and that you want to be able to assess their skills in a realistic setting. And you're sort of making it very collaborative and being able to, like you said, Francois, assess what they know and what they don't know, or
Mm,
how they can use AI and how they don't know how to use AI, kind of thing.
yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
And I'm wondering if actually AI is such a big difference about the way that most of the developers are actually working, in real condition. And I'm a big fan of memes, and there is a meme. I don't know if you know it, Francois. It's two guys are discussing, and one say, "Oh, sorry, bro, I stole your code," and the man answer, "It was even not my code."
Yeah.
Mm,
Because he started already. He started on Stack Overflow. So we have so many resources, and every time a developer is starting a project, he doesn't start from scratch. He starts with by using what others have done before. And what is
It's
generative
efficiency.
AI? It's just a large, super big database where you can ask, okay, can I borrow you or can I steal? If we are on the moral perspective, this code from ChatGPT or from Claude. I think Claude is much better for coding actually, but and or it's really part, I think, of the way developers are actually working in a company. I know I have no percentage to give, but I don't know how many code is actually the real production of a developer in a coding process. Maybe Francois, you could have some idea about
Good
it.
guess.
And how many, it is just okay. Well, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. Can we say that in English? Yeah.
I'm,
mm,
Uh,
I think
no,
so.
not sure.
I'm
Sorry,
not sure
I'm
if that's
going
a
to
French
do it.
expression.
Going to recreate some things that have
Mm,
been created before, and I'm going to take what works, what already works, and the
mm,
principle of frameworks, and the principle of libraries, and the principle.
mm,
mm.
So, the question of morality in an assessment process is very tricky for me to have the perspective from a recruiter, what I understand clearly, because I understand that the recruiter wants someone who is honest
mm,
to the company, to himself probably, and to the other competitors. But knowing what a development process in IT is, there is also this question of very few programmers are actually coding. So
mm,
what do we do regarding that? I don't know. What's
mm,
your opinion about that, Francois?
Yeah, I agree with what you've just said. Very few programmers are producing code 8 hours a day. That does
mhm,
not exist. A lot of a very heavy duty for programmers is auditing what is already existing
mhm,
inside the system, outside the systems, trying to explore new ways of doing things, trying to transform the code so it becomes more efficient.
mm,
So it's a bit cliche to think that the programmer is using its 10 fingers to type code all day long, and at the end of the day, they produce thousands of lines of code. Most of
mm,
the time, the code already existed somewhere, and they are
mm,
refactoring it, or they produce new code, but it's copy pasted from
mm,
other knowledge bases that they
mm,
explore on a daily basis. And I agree with what you said before, Guillaume, is that I don't know a single programmer who knows every single um, uh, specific topic about his programming language, that he can type it
yeah.
blindly. I think they always need to look at the documentation and how it works again. I don't remember. So
Mm,
they know for loops and those kind of things, but for more advanced features in their programming languages, very often they have to rely on technical experts,
mm,
reading papers, looking at knowledge bases. So yeah, I agree with you. And if we want to assess them and their skills in the I would say the right way, or at least in a fair way, it means that we need to give them access to the knowledge that they would use on the job
mm.
daily. I remember
Yeah,
when we
it's
were
exactly. It's exactly what I was going to say. I was saying I think
yeah.
it's exactly that that needs to be mirrored in your hiring process and
Mm,
in your assessment process. Exactly. I see that we're about halfway through the webinar, so I want to move things along and get to some other questions that we had just for this roundtable discussion. And then I know that we've been receiving questions from the audience, and I definitely want to get to those. So I wanted to ask what I think we've already addressed sort of what behaviors maybe have appeared or increased with the arrival of AI. What would you recommend, and what would you recommend, or what would you advise against putting in place to identify any suspicious behavior, any behavior that's sort of in that gray area that you would want to identify and be able to sort of explore? What would you recommend putting in place? And maybe what have you already experimented with? Guillaume, do you have any advice or recommendations?
Will be maybe a bit provocative saying that probably AI will be the best option to check if one is cheating or not.
AI can
That's
identify AI.
well, actually, AI can identify if one is cheating, and that's already the case. You know, when you are when you have you know, some behavior, some weird behavior on websites, the AI is able to determine if it's a human behavior or if it's automated behavior. So
Mhm.
we do that all the time, and
Mm,
for you know, everything to prevent scrapping. You know, are you scrapping with an automated system or not? So it exists
mm,
already. So I think yes, as the integration of AI in the process, in the checking process, I think will be quite useful. And of course, you have all the functional stuff with the camera checking if the eye tracking movement and all this stuff. But I'm not sure it's such a good idea because it's quite stressful for many people. And personally, I wouldn't like to be checked when I'm
mm,
doing my work. But I'm
mm,
not a developer entirely, but I wouldn't like that. So maybe it's a good opportunity with the development of AI to say, okay, you know, our AI system has detected that you are not acting normally when you're doing these tasks. So can you explain why? Can you explain this kind of thing? I think that will
mm.
be the next system to verify the honesty of the candidate.
And I think it's I mean it's not to you know the prêcher pour ma paroisse is another French expression. So, but yeah, obviously I'm going to talk about Codapad
Mm.
because that's what I know and love. But yeah, we've definitely started. I mean, we have AI powered features that are available within the platform. And that will allow you to, on the one hand, there's identifying any behavior that's suspicious, maybe something was done in a fraction of the time it's normally done by all the other developers that are taking that sort of test or answering that kind of question on the platform, or maybe it's a massive chunk of copy and paste, or maybe I don't know, whatever it is that we can identify and flag, and then the use of AI to be able to, like you were saying, Guillaume, to be able to ask follow-up questions. So anything that's flagged as suspicious, to be able to ask a follow-up question, not necessarily not a question like this looks suspicious, can you defend it? But more of a question on like they've submitted a piece of code and you would ask, is there a way that you would, I mean, I'm trying to come up with something technical now, but is there a way that you would optimize this? Or can you see any, like, we've recognized an error, can you show me where the error would be? Or I don't know, something much more convincing and technical. But the idea is that, yeah, AI would be able to, in that context, ask follow-up questions, which will just give you a lot more sort of transparency and visibility into how that developer's thinking and if they can answer questions about what they're putting forward. Um, and then, like you mentioned, Guillaume, proctoring. I don't know if Alice, if you can hear me, if you've already shared the resource we have on that balance between proctoring and candidate experience. We have a really interesting article on that. It is a sort of a fine line. I think it is something to use maybe sparingly or really depending on what context you're in. And I think the key is how you communicate around that to your candidates. I definitely think you want to protect your candidate experience, and that I agree that proctoring can be perceived negatively by some candidates. Francois, was there anything that you would recommend, or maybe something you've already experimented with?
What I would recommend, if you ask a developer to produce code as part of an assessment for, let's say, a recruitment process, having a technical expert from your company reviewing the code and having a technical expert that knows about Gen AI and that has the same thing I had with, reading cover letters that seems too good to be true, having a very having an eye for the details in the code that
Mm,
says it's handmade or it's been generated. I think algorithms can help on that, and I'm sure CoderPad has some great features to do this. But having a technical expert doing it, I think it's also a good way to assess if the code has been generated or not. There's one
mm,
thing that Guillaume highlighted earlier. He asked why the person is using Gen AI in the context of an assessment. And I think
mhm,
that's a very interesting question, asking why. I'm pretty sure most cheaters do not consider themselves cheaters. Uh,
mm,
I'm sure you drive above the speed limit on the highway, or maybe you committed tax fraud without knowing it, or maybe you knew it, but you felt like it was your rightful right to do it, or, most people that see a system also see how they can find workarounds uh, to benefit from this system. And I think
mm,
it's a human thing. So every time you
mm,
create a system to assess someone, there's a candidate that we try to find workarounds.
mm,
I had a very interesting scenario those past few weeks. So you couldn't imagine the number of cheaters that you might find in a company context. Let's say you have a referral bonus, but the
mhm,
directors are not eligible to this bonus because it's their duty to recruit for their team. You might have directors who ask a team member, an individual contributor, to refer the profile for them. And so they
mm,
would split the bonus between them. I'm sure none of them would consider themselves as cheaters. They just see a system and they see how they would benefit from it. So I
mm,
think an applicant going through a technical test during an interview process or a recruitment process using Gen AI, knowing that recruiters has been using AI to assess profiles for the past few years, would not feel as they are cheating the game. They would just feel that they are optimizing the way they are completing the tasks.
mm, mm,
Maybe one last thing about detecting cheaters. A very, very funny story that happened to one of my recruiters a few months ago. We were recruiting a user acquisition profile for one of our studio in Berlin, Germany. And my recruiter, her name is Colin, she was having an interview with someone, and she asked the Colin asked a question, and the candidate answered a very specific series of words in a very specific order with a very specific tone. And Colin said, okay, well, noted. And she asked another question, and the candidate answered the very same specific list of words in the very same order with a very specific tone, and it was the same tone. And she was like, oh, it feels like I've heard that already, but maybe it's just a coincidence. And later in the interview, Colin asked another question, and again, very same
mm,
sentence, very same tone, very same words in the exact same order. And
mm,
at this point, Colin understood that the video was recorded. She was watching a recording of someone answering question, and the person used the same recording 3 times in the same interview. And she was like,
mm,
whoa, someone is cheating the interview. It's a visual interview. Someone is cheating a visual interview.
mm,
And she felt betrayed. And so at this point, it's not optimizing anymore. It's clearly cheating.
mm,
Yeah, so there's no way to prevent that apart from the fact that maybe sometimes the cheating applicant will do something that is uh, either stupid or maybe not intentional, and that you might at this point um, spot that it's a cheating operation that is just in front of your eyes.
mm. Yeah, absolutely.
Also, I have a
Sorry.
sorry, Natalie, I have something to add about this. Very funny thing that actually happened to me, and I was assessing someone for recruitment, and I noticed that the code was very well commented.
Hmm.
And that's a thing, if you're a coder, you know that very few good developers are actually commenting their code. And when they're commenting, when you make a comment on the line, it's not very well written. It's fast notes. That's not
Mm,
something, AI can fake. It's very human. It's a very human aspect. The comment of the
Like
code
note
of the
taking.
not taking, etc. And that's the thing. And if it's too well written, if the comment is too well written, you can be 100% sure that it has been AI generated.
I wanted to, so I think just one last question, and then we'll get to the questions that that people have been sending in. So we've talked a little bit about, and actually I saw, Alice, that you did share the article that we have on why candidates cheat, why developers cheat. And I think understanding the root causes and sort of what might encourage or push a developer to cheat is also a really interesting part of like defining what cheating means for you as a company and defining what you want to put in place to limit that and what you want to identify and how you want to approach that sort of the use of AI and cheating in general as part of your hiring process. So I'd highly recommend that. And we've talked a little bit about sort of features and tools and things that you can put in place. We do also have an article on the different features that exist within assessment tools that you could be looking for or deciding whether or not you want to use them. I think it's generally there are things that you can turn on, turn off, and I wouldn't say turn everything off and think, okay, my process is secure, because that's a recipe for disaster. But we have a list, a pretty extensive list where you can think, okay, this is relevant for me in my context. So I would recommend that as well. I don't know if Alice, you've already shared that, but that would be great if you could. So I think one last question. We've talked about AI. We've talked a lot about how candidates use AI. How can recruiters use AI to their advantage? Could you share some examples of how AI can be successfully integrated into the hiring process to improve outcomes or improve efficiency for TA, for recruiters? Maybe Francois?
Yeah, as a recruiter, maybe I should start on that topic. I think as recruiters, we might be tempted to deploy AI at every stage of the recruitment process. I think that would be a mistake, but it's for you to judge whether or not you want to do it as a recruiter. What we are doing right now with AI is mostly administrative work, meaning writing job ads, rewriting job ads, improving job ads, improving boilerplates, writing Boolean strings in order to perform search on several platforms. We are using AI to generate question banks. We are using AI to give us more ideas and enrich our scorecards. We are using AI to try to write interview guides for hiring managers that didn't have the chance to recruit with us before. So we are trying to use AI in order to facilitate the recruitment process and to tackle the very administrative, low added value tasks that we have as recruiters. I don't think using AI to help the decision-making process, or even worse, to make a decision for us or for the hiring manager would be wise. First of all, because it's forbidden by la CNIL in France and RGPD all around the world. GDPR in English, I think it is. GDPR in English. But also because from an ethical standpoint, I think it's a good thing to start thinking about where should we use AI and where should we not use AI. And I think both aspects are super important. And everything related to the decision-making process, I think, should be left to human beings. At least for now. Maybe in 10 years, ethics will change and we'll have another discussion about it. But I think in 2024, 2025, in order to be fair to our candidates, do not let a machine make a decision about someone's future.
Yeah.
Guillaume, do you have maybe a very, very quick answer so that we get
Right.
to the Q&A?
Yeah, of course. That's also services that we provide, so I can speak about them. Coming from digital marketing, you have very close similitudes between the sourcing process and the prospecting process. So, for instance, quick wins. You can produce automatically. Let's say compte rendu. I'm forgetting the name. Reports of the exchange you have with the candidates. That's very useful. So you don't have to write down or to take notes during the interview. You can focus on the candidate during the interview, which is very useful. And you can automate follow-up emails, for instance. It already exists, but you can make them much more personalized, and you can in your whole personalize all the different steps of the processing process. So using AI can be a way to humanize the recruiting process, which is quite a paradox, but it's true. And also, you can be much more precise when you are sourcing someone, when you are preparing your interviews, your structured interviews. For instance, you can make something much more credibility and much more efficiency for yourself and for the candidate also. So many use cases.
Absolutely. I think there are lots of use cases. I think maybe a last comment would be if you're wondering how you can use AI to improve your hiring process, ask AI. Go ask ChatGPT, how can I use, like, give them a little bit of context. How can I use AI to improve my hiring process in this context with this objective? And then maybe, like Guillaume was saying, also ask, look up how do you use AI in marketing, for example, because I think there are a lot of applications that you could apply to your recruitment. Let's get to the questions from the audience. So Paul has sent in a question. He asks, can you share techniques for assessing a candidate's deeper understanding under the assumption they may use generated or copied content? So in the case, so we did talk a little bit about a case where a candidate would use AI to generate code, generate content. If you wanted to then go from that and actually assess what they understand, a deeper understanding, a thought process, how would you recommend that we do that? Maybe Francois.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for the question. I think one technique that we use here at Ubisoft, but maybe it's spread worldwide, is the technical breadth versus technical depth technique, meaning that if you think about skills as a capital T, you know, the letter T, capital T, you have that horizontal bar that is the technical breadth, which is basically the ability of the candidate to be super versatile, and you have the other bar, this one, the vertical one, that is the technical depth, which is the ability of the candidate to be an expert on something. And I think if you run technical tests like multiple choice question tests to candidates, you have the ability to filter a few candidates, but you don't really have the ability to really know whether the technical depth or the technical breadth are okay for the position that you're offering. So what we do most of the time is that when we do technical assessment and online technical assessment, we do not only do MCQs, but we also do programming exercises, free text questions, and then we have a technical conversation with a technical expert. Because let's say I'm only doing MCQs and I ask the question, is Python a compiled language? Yes or no? Well, the candidate that doesn't know has a 50% chance of scoring the right question. Whether if I'm having a few questions that are MCQs, then a few questions that are live coding exercises, and then a verbal conversation between a technical expert from my technical team and the candidate, I'm limiting the risks of having candidates that are cheating that are then hired by my company. And I think
I'd argue that you'd even probably get less candidates that want to cheat because if you're sending them a test that's engaging and there's a variety of formats and it's relevant to the role that they're applying for, and it's not just like, is Python a compiled language? Like,
yeah,
it's something that's actually interesting to them and that they feel is actually assessing their skills and is relevant to the role, then they're less likely to want to cheat that test. So you probably already have less candidates that are cheating.
yeah,
And then I absolutely agree. If you can send a test like that and then follow up with a technical discussion, you can even use the results from the test for your technical
yeah.
discussion as sort of a basis for your discussion, something to build on. And that makes it both engaging for the candidate and obviously gives you a much better read on their skill.
Yeah, absolutely. Following up on the technical test is super important because when you read the technical test, you have an approximate of what the candidate knows. But when you focus on the questions where the candidate fail, then you can ask why did you fail to this question? Because you didn't know the answer, because you thought you know the answer, but it's not the right answer. And so you
Mm,
not only assess what the candidate knows, you also assess what the candidate thinks he knows but he doesn't know, and what the candidate doesn't know that he doesn't know, which is
mm,
also super important. So you're going way deeper in the layer of
mm,
understanding of the candidate, which is super, super important. So what we
mm,
do most of the time in my team is that we have those technical online tests, and we do a variety of tests, MCQs, live coding, free text, etc. And then we
mm,
have a verbal debriefing with a technical expert to
mm,
go through all those layers.
mm.
Yeah.
Thank
So,
you so much.
and
Paul, I hope that that answers your question. Guillaume, would you mind if I give you
yeah,
another
very
question?
quickly,
Okay.
to sum it up in a word, chain of thought. It's an expression in the AI world saying that when you are processing any issue, you have to explain your chain of thought. Or
Hmm.
that's actually how the O1 models from OpenAI work. And so if you're able to ask someone, okay, what was the purpose of your coding? Not only, your technical skills, of the ability to create a loop and everything, but
Mm,
how did you imagine, how did you design in your head what you have to write as a code? That's definitely the way to know if you have a good candidate in front of you or not. The chain of thought.
hmm. Absolutely. So I have a question. There's actually a question from Kim on what style of assessments do you consider more AI proof if you didn't want candidates to use it during the process? I think actually the sort of the assessment that we just mentioned, that sort of process of having a technical assessment with with a variety of question formats and then following up with a technical assessment. I think that's what I would consider more AI proof, or at least is going to allow you to build on that and sort of move forward with curiosity. So I hope that we've answered that question in the discussion. And we also have a question from Nicholas, sorry. I'm curious about what companies do prior to a coding interview. Do you typically send out specific instructions of what candidates can and cannot access or use during the interview? Um, so so yeah, we touched on this, but do you think you could share anything more about what you would communicate to candidates? I'm going to go back to Francois on this one.
Of course.
I'd love to know, yeah, what you do at Ubisoft and what you communicate.
So for the roles that my team is handling right now, I think there's two things that we do. First of all, we ask candidates, we give an approximation of the time that we think is needed to perform the task. So we say, all
Hmm.
right, this test should last 3 hours. Please tell us if you take more time or if you take less time, because we're interested in knowing whether or not you spend 10 hours on the test or only
Mm,
1 hour. So so we give like 1 week to the candidate to go through the technical assessment, and
mhm,
we tell them, just tell us how much time it took you
mm.
to get to the outcome.
So it's not an assessment that's timed, it's like a take-home
Yeah,
assessment.
yeah, it can be a take-home assessment. We do
Okay.
that
And
too.
do you feel that candidates are transparent on the time it took them?
Yeah, because we say it's not a big deal if you take less time or more time. We just
Hmm.
want to know, just to have the information.
Hmm.
And it's easier for us to know whether or not they would count like research time or audit time
Mm,
as the time that they spend to
hmm.
produce the
Okay.
test, or they just count the time that they produced maybe code, or I don't know, data
Mm.
sets, models, frameworks, etc.
And
Another
are you specific about what tools they can use, for example?
No, most of the time we are not. Most of the time when we do take-home assessments, assignments, we only use free tools, and so we don't ask them to have specific licenses on their
Mm,
machine to perform the tasks. So we always use freemium tools, so they can perform the tasks. And another thing also we do is that we ask them to tell us if they use Gen AI. That's not, most of the time that's not forbidden, but if they use it, we want to know if they did, and if yes, for what reason. So we
mm,
come back to the why that that we discussed earlier in this
mm.
discussion. Yeah.
And I think it's really if you can say like, please tell us what tools, like what AI you've used and how you've used it. I think it's an opportunity to say Like, we encourage you to use what you would use on the job. We encourage you to use whatever helps you do your job best. It's also sort of an opportunity for you to take position as an employer, and as part of your sort of employer branding and company culture, you're being able to communicate that right from the beginning of the hiring process. So I think those are some great points. We also have a question from Amanda. So Amanda says, we're receiving thousands of resumes. How can we use AI to help automate the screening process at the top of the funnel? So at the very, very beginning of the hiring process. Guillaume, do you maybe have some ideas?
Well, yes, AI can definitely help with that, but it's always the same thing. Is because within a resume, sometimes you by reading it with your human eye, you find some jewels, and say, oh my God, he has done that. That's an AI can totally miss because AI is an automated system. It has been programmed for just a certain task. And the recruiter knows what's in some cases that this experience, which is totally out of the box, can be a huge asset for the company. So that's the difficulty. But when you have a lot of CVs, like hundreds and thousands of CVs to assess, yes, in that case, maybe you have to use AI tools for fastest. I mean, just to eliminate maybe the people who are completely out of what is asked. So, but not for selecting the good profile, but just to remove maybe the 50, 60, maybe 70% of the resumes that are really not aligned with the request of
And
the person.
I think there's a big difference between automation and AI. I think sometimes they're used interchangeably, whereas it's very different. You can automate something that doesn't I mean, it's not that it doesn't rely on AI, but it's not AI in the way that it's ChatGPT or it's AI making a decision. So you can use tools to automate some of the steps of your hiring process, especially your screening process at the beginning of your recruitment process, without depending on AI to make judgment decisions, like you were saying, Guillaume. So if you're sending, you can send out, you could automate, for example, the fact that you're sending a screening test, an online coding test to everybody that submits an application. That doesn't mean that you're relying on AI to evaluate those skills. It just means that you're saving time by making that an automated process. Does that make sense? I hope
Yeah.
In a
that
way,
makes
but
sense.
also as you can have automation without AI, but AI is definitely an automation system, but a very, very, very efficient one, and that one can be used, to answer the question, to eliminate and to say, okay, I've checked this profile and I say, okay, it doesn't as a for the technical skills, it's very easy to see, okay, you're too junior for this position, or you don't have exactly the type of language that we want you to master. That is a way to eliminate, but not to select the right profile. It has to be the final decision has to be taken by a human. You need a human in the loop always.
Yes, and I think you also need a human in the building of your screening test. I wouldn't completely automate or rely on AI to do that. I think like with CoderPad, for example, yes, you can enter your criteria, the level of seniority, the technologies you're looking to evaluate, and CoderPad will automatically create a test. But then what we always recommend is that you go in and check that test and make sure that it's relevant to the skills you're trying to assess. And then you can personalize it as little or as much as you want. And a test like that to sort of evaluate the very basic skills that are absolutely non-negotiable for the role, that's a way that you can screen at the beginning of your process. We have another question from Audrey. I think this will be the last question. If someone spends all of their time on ChatGPT to find answers for a test, would you consider that cheating? So if it's all come from ChatGPT, is that too much? Is that cheating?
My answer is yes.
Well, there you go. I'm not absolutely 100% sure. I would say even if
See,
it all comes from ChatGPT, if you then have a technical discussion and they can like defend everything that they've
yeah,
submitted, build on it, explain their thought process, then why not? I think
Yeah, I know
maybe.
I shared with you the story of Greg Young from XAI, and
Hmm.
he was explaining in a tweet that he had someone was cheating during the process, and he'd say, okay, so first of all, everybody's cheating, so are you doing just like everybody else? Which is the argument that people use for doping in sport also, but
Mm.
as you mentioned. And he say, so okay, well, explain me where did you find all this information about our recruiting process? He say it's all online. There is a site
Mm.
called 1.3 acres, and it is all the tests are here online. Maybe I shouldn't have said it actually, but and he said it's a Chinese website and it allows us to
Mm.
have all the answers. So you don't need ChatGPT because uh, I think the candidates and maybe the smart ones, I don't know, are always a step ahead. So it's
Mm.
a cat of mouse game in a place. So of course people will try to use a database with answers, but at the very end, I don't think that you can cheat on a long term, because even
Yeah.
if you can be hired by chance, you are hired by the company because you
Mm.
lied and you cheated. After how many days will
Mm.
everybody notice that you're not qualified for the job, and
Mm.
then you'll be fired because
Mm.
so well, what's the point? Everybody is
Mm.
losing time in the process.
Mm.
So
So I think so I know we're over time. I'm going to say thank you very much to everybody who's joined us. I think a closing word would be, and it's relevant to what you were saying about leaking content, the more relevant and specific to your context you can make your assessment process, the better and the more cheat proof, AI proof, leak proof it will be. We do actually have some great content on this on our blog, so I recommend that you check that out. But yeah, thank you so much to everybody who's joined us. Thank you very much, Francois and Guillaume. I absolutely loved spending this hour with you. Thank you to everybody who's been active in the chat. I know some people have been sharing advice and tips, so that's amazing to see. So yeah, thank you all again, and I hope to see you soon on another webinar. I'm going to say bye. Have a good day, afternoon, morning, wherever you are.
thank
goodbye.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
That's
Goodbye.
great.
Euh,
Petit débrief ou
Ça enregistre toujours. Et il y a des gens.
ah, pardon.